Looking up at the night sky, the dancing lights and distant stars are observed by all, peasants and scholars alike. To each observer, however, a different meaning to every luminescent figure can be found. To some, the stars spell the future. They show us omens of what is yet to pass. To others, they tell us of our ancestors, great pillars of our own heritage. But to those who live in places where the veil between other worlds and our own dwindles, places where you could wander through the wrong patch of forest and find yourself in an alien realm, a light streaking across the sky can spell disaster. Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the show where we dig up old creatures from past editions of D&D and recently mythology and bring them to light for use in your current 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game. My name is Josiah, also known as Dungeon Dad, and today, keeping with the theme of our last video, we're going to be talking about a creature that comes to us from myth. NAMORRODOR is the name of a spirit that comes to us from Australian Aboriginal mythology. This spirit is said to emerge into the material world at night and soar across the skies, scouring the earth for prey. It's also referred to as the Meteor Spirit because, as the original story goes, when the Aboriginal peoples would look up into the night sky and see a meteor streaking across the darkness, they would tell stories about how that was the eye of one of these creatures that was dark as night, so you couldn't see the rest of it, but it was looking and hunting for people that were weak that it could prey upon. And the way they can tell if there's good prey nearby is these creatures have two sets of eyes. The first set is used exactly how you would expect any normal set of eyes to work. They use it to see. The second set, however, allows them to see the life force of mortal beings. In other words, they can tell if something has a weaker life force than something else and therefore would be easier to catch and kill. So because of this, the NAMORRODOR has a reputation for hunting down elderly or very young children, as well as other people who have been weakened in some way, such as those who might be ill or wounded soldiers after a battle. These creatures are extremely stealthy, and their main tactic is to use their claws to go directly for the heart of whoever it is they're trying to hunt. So just like in our last video, I've created a stat block for these guys completely from scratch. It is wholly original, and you can find a link to that in the description below. It fills a nice niche at CR4 that is probably one of the most useful levels for a creature to be at, because you can use it as a powerful enemy for lower level parties. You can also use it as a regular encounter for mid to high level parties. So today I'm going to talk about just exactly what these creatures can do in battle, and of course some ways that you can deploy this brand new Fey creature in your D&D game. So keep an eye on the sky because it's time for... So it should come as no surprise, since I literally talked about how they soar across the night sky. This creature can fly. And they're fairly quick. It has a move speed of 40 feet and a fly speed of 60 feet. So not only is it incredibly mobile, it's also incredibly stealthy, and it uses both of those traits to its advantage as much as it can. It's very rare that you're ever going to engage in a straight up fight with a NAMORRODOR. It's most often going to be stalking and waiting for the opportune moment to strike its prey. They're also fairly intelligent, and they can speak Sylvan and Primordial, so it's not like an animal instinct, it's an actual human level intelligence that's thinking these thoughts. Now, the only way of dealing direct damage this creature actually has is its massive and vicious claws. Now, because of its uncanny ability to sense the life force in mortals and kind of knows when and where it should strike to cause the most amount of damage, it has a unique trait in that if it attacks a creature and hits it with one of its claws, and that creature has less than half its maximum hit point total, the hit is automatically a critical. So this incentivizes the creature to attack the same thing over and over again until it drops, because it's going to be doing double the amount of damage theoretically. And of course, being a Fey creature, it has some innate magic that is beyond mortal comprehension that lets it do a few neat things that a normal beast wouldn't be able to do, aside from fly, of course. The creature has some form of spatial control that allows it to essentially teleport 10 feet as a bonus action, and this is at worst going to essentially extend its movement by 10 feet or enable it to get away from attacks of opportunity before it moves somewhere else, and at best is going to completely change the way this creature engages in combat. It can use this ability as an incredibly effective ambush tactic, especially against creatures that don't have dark vision in dark places. So say your party's investigating an old abandoned house or some kind of structure, and they don't really have a great field of vision. If this creature is able to quickly dart in and then teleport either outside of said structure or into another room or something like that, it's going to be really hard for the players to figure out exactly what they're fighting and to pin it down in one location. And of course, there's the ability to just teleport through certain hazards or traps that it might not normally be able to get around. Another trait this creature has that's drawn directly from the Aboriginal legend is that when it is eventually defeated, this creature lets out a blood-curdling screech that is extremely loud and extremely off-putting. It's definitely the type of sound that would not be made by anything natural. So in D&D, when this creature is defeated, meaning when it drops to 0 hit points, it lets out this deafening cry, and all creatures within 60 feet of it are deafened for a certain amount of time, and they also get a chance to make a save to avoid some thunder damage. So if you're to just look at this Fae as a medium panther-like creature, it might not seem too threatening at first, but it has a lot of tricks up its sleeve that can really turn the tides and manipulate the battlefield to go the way that it wants the hunt to go. But where this creature is really going to come to life is in the execution and how you deploy this against your players. So let's talk about some. So as I mentioned, this creature lurks in the Feywild until nightfall on the material plane, when it can then venture out into the night and stalk its prey. So you could of course use this as a random encounter. It's really easy to justify that, and maybe the party even encounters a few of these things a couple nights in a row while they're venturing through a certain area, and then later on they learn about the legend of the NAMORRODOR from the villages that are nearby. But something that you may have heard before, and which I think holds true for a lot of horror and suspense-filled moments, not just with D&D, but in storytelling in general, is that the monster is always less scary when you actually see it in its full glory. When you see what it is and you can rationalize, okay, this is what I'm looking at, this is what I'm fighting. When you give the enemy an appearance and a form, is when it becomes less intriguing and less terrifying in some cases. So ideally, you want the party to learn about the legend of this creature first, before they actually encounter it. Maybe even have some studious book learning wizards who are like, no, a meteor is this. It's a clearly defined astronomical event. It has nothing to do with the Feywild or anything. Or maybe the party is in fact quite superstitious and they believe this legend at face value and they're constantly on their guard. In either case though, it creates a bit of tension for the party where they can discuss how much of it they think is true and how much of this legend they don't really think holds up. And ultimately, it just plants that seed in the back of their mind that if they see a meteor or just in this area in general at night, there might be something out there that they need to be wary of. The other thing about this creature, because it is quite intelligent and has that sense of life force and how strong the life force in another creature might be, it's not going to just attack a fully armed party at maximum strength when they're ready to go. Even a nighttime ambush against a party at full strength is a huge risk for a creature like this. But it might take notice of this group of creatures traversing through its domain and watch them for a night or two or a week or however long they spend in this area. And maybe it decides, I might take those people down, but it waits. And if the opportunity presents itself, that's when it will strike. For example, if the party has a really tough encounter and they decide to take a long rest, half the party is bloodied, they're low on spell slots, and they just need to rest and recover those precious hit points. That is when the NAMORRODOR is going to strike. It will be able to sense that one or two or maybe even all of the party members are weakened and they're not at their maximum strength, so it knows it has the best chance of taking one of them down. So this is a great encounter to interrupt a party that's going for a long rest and licking their wounds. You could also use it in a capacity kind of outside of what the original legend entails, of course. You have that creative freedom as a DM. If a villain in your campaign is some kind of Fey Lord who might hold domain over other Fey that live in his or her part of the Feywild, it could very well have servants that are NAMORRODOR. Or perhaps you decide, due to the kind of dark nature of these creatures, they don't live in the Feywild, but they live in the Shadowfell. You could even spin these guys as servants of the Raven Queen, and perhaps she sends them out as almost hunting dogs, and the arrival of a NAMORRODOR or several NAMORRODOR kind of heralds that there are servants of the Raven Queen on their way. One of these guys could make a great companion for a Shadar Kai or even an Eladrin, depending on how you want to play it. And of course, you can always just go for a classic monster hunting take on the whole thing and have the party tasked with venturing into the Feywild by the villagers or perhaps another Fey that has a reason to hate the NAMORRODOR, and ultimately with the goal of defeating and killing one of these things. If you don't want to run a campaign that takes place in the Feywild, but you have some ideas for a nice tiny little adventure, a NAMORRODOR could be a very good excuse for the party to venture into a piece of the Feywild, just so they kind of have that one session where they get to go to this weird place and you can kind of throw a few things at them that you've been put on the back burner and just didn't really have a place to put in your world. But however you choose to use this creature, it is undeniable that it has really interesting lore, and I'm also always happy to add more Fey creatures to a cast of creatures in 5th edition that we have that doesn't really have a ton of Fey in it already. So if you have ideas for how you want to throw this creature at a party, definitely leave a comment below, tell me all about it. You guys always come up with really out-of-the-box stuff, and I've definitely stolen an idea here or there more than once. By stolen, of course, I mean borrowed. Also, as I mentioned, if you do want to use this creature, the stat block is available in the form of a Google document. You can find a link to that in the description below. And of course, if you are one of my fantastic patrons, you can find the Monster Manual style Patreon stat block, also linked in the description below on the Patreon page. And while you're down there, you can find my Twitter, the Discord community, all that good stuff. And speaking of Discord, a huge shout out to Das, who is one of our moderators on Discord, and also the person who suggested that I cover this creature. We had some good talk on there with the community after the last episode, and we were all talking about different mythical creatures we'd like to see, and Das pitched this idea for covering the NAMORRODOR, and I thought it was really cool, and I dug into it and then thought the creature was really, really cool, so here we are. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys had an awesome holiday season, whatever you were celebrating, and as we go into 2019, I hope you guys have an awesome year. I'm really looking forward to see where this channel goes in the next few months and the year to come. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.